Now, some of the companies had specialties in particular categories. The Kuno and Otto Dressel Company, whose heads were made by Simon and Halbig, by the way, had a whole line of American historical heroes, which are wonderful. And this is a particular example they made. Obviously, we know who it is. It's George Washington. They really captured him very well, not only in the face in the sculpture, but in the costume of the time. And this is a great example because, check this out. This is wonderful. I'm removing the horse's head, and I'm revealing that he is a candy container. And there are some other wonderful candy containers in the collections of Helen Welsh and Evelyn Heiderprim that you will really enjoy seeing. Now, I talked about Gebrüder Heubach and how they made the art character dolls. Gebrüder Heubach was one of the firms that very quickly learned one of the problems with the art character dolls from a consumer's point of view was they wanted sleeping eyes. They wanted to have eyes that opened and closed. They felt this made the doll more realistic from a children's point of view. And so many of their characters can be found with sleep eyes or with painted eyes. You can have either variation. Sometimes also wigs or painted hair. So this is what I mean when I say you could collect for decades and never get all of them. This is an extraordinary example from the Evelyn Heiderprim collection and originally from the Legoland Museum collection when we sold it and Evelyn purchased it from us, and now it's coming back to be offered to you again. Very, very great doll because, number one, his size is quite rare for this model. He has original wonderful mohair lashes. He has beautiful bisque. He has his wonderful antique costume and a great example of one of the works by Gebrüder Heubach. Another example by them, and as I said, there are like 35 examples in this auction, is this very, very great sleep-eyed character with the pink-tinted complexion and notable expression because the eyes are very, very small. They're sleep eyes, but very tiny, almost not squinting, but just very small eyes and a very wistful expression. Very great characterization to the doll. You want to look in these dolls for things that I have found that other collectors care about, and you want to keep an eye out for these because other collectors are really your best teachers, are flawlessness of the bisque, like things that where the painting is beautiful to begin with and flawless and subtle and beautiful blushing that is so realistic, but that also has kind of been preserved over time, and it doesn't have a lot of rubs or scratches. And these two dolls are just wonderful examples of that. Now, other companies that had been making the art character dolls also quickly learned, okay, we can make a character doll, but if we make it with sleep eyes, it has much more of a market base. And this is a very good example. This is a wonderful doll by Simon and Halbig. They did another series of art character dolls that they call their 1300 series, and there's 1358 and 1368 and 1348 and many other numbers, and they're just wonderfully expressive, and they tend to almost always have the glass eyes. And this is a very beautiful brown complexion doll, and what is significant about it, it is very often the German doll makers would simply, if they wanted to make a brown complexion doll, they'd just take a classic white doll that they had made, and they just make a brown complexion. When you get into the art characters, you get much more actual definition of character and good features, and this is a really beautiful example with, again, a wonderful costume, Simon and Halbig model. Now, the biggest example of the company, coming back full circle, that decided we've got to go back and make a pretty child doll because people just don't like our art characters, and that was Cameron Reinhardt, who had kind of been at the forefront of it all. So the doll they made that is the most transitional model from the painted eye, pouty-faced art character doll back to their idealized dolly-faced doll was the model that collectors refer to as Mein Liebling. Actually, Cameron Reinhardt referred to all of their dolls at this time period as Mein Liebling. This particular 117 model was appeared in their catalogs as Mein Süßer Liebling, my sweet darling. And sweet she is. She is beautiful. This is a very, very wonderful example. Very pensive, wistful, winsome expression to the face, but glass eyes. Again, so having much more kind of a cross between an art character and an idealized child doll. And a wonderful antique costume as well. Just fabulous all the way around. And I wanted to show you this tiny example. Another Mein Süsser Liebling, but in the tiniest possible example. And she's absolutely wonderful. I always think it was funny that one of the biggest internet places today is Google, because we in the doll world knew all about Google for a long time before it came on the internet. And those were our googly dolls. And some people trace the history of googly dolls back to Palmer Cox, who in 1892 designed his brownies with their big googly eyes. There certainly are lots of trends of what made them popular. There's the idea of the googly eyes of comic characters of the 1915 and 20s, and there also was the very, very famous Kewpie. Kewpie had googly eyes, and that really was, if not the beginning of the googly, certainly the impetus that made it so popular from 1915 through 1925. I wanted to show you this little grouping of dolls that are from the Kaleidoscope auction, because so many times people will come to the auction and say, I saw it in your catalog, I saw it online, but I had no idea of the size. So check this doll's face. It's about as big as mine. This is such an extraordinarily rare googly to find in this size. It's a Jubilee googly, and it's just wonderful. This is another example of a Jubilee googly to show you that it was made in various sizes. All are extremely hard to find, but to find one in this larger size is virtually impossible. And she's standing next to it, to give you proportion, 14-inch. She's standing next to a 14-inch Kestner 221 googly, and this, by the way, traces its inspiration, let's call it, to the Kewpie, because Kestner also made the bisque-headed version of the Kewpie doll, with a composition body with big glass googly eyes, and they were paying a licensing fee, and somewhere I think they started to think, hey, wait a minute, we could make our own. We don't have to pay a licensing fee. So they made their doll that was as close as it could be to a Kewpie without actually being a Kewpie, and that's their 221 googly. It was very popular, and it still is today, and rightfully so. Absolutely wonderful doll. I love this fellow with his American hat. In the front, our friends Gebrüder Heubach again, that I said made literally hundreds of models of dolls. And here you have two examples of wonderful googly dolls that they made, one with the famous winking eye, known as the winker, of course. So just a few examples of googlies that are available. I always have thought it was a very curious contradiction to have combine googlies with figures of war, but here we have dolls, the googlies that were done by Max Handwerk, and they represented all of the figures who were involved in World War I. We have, of course, our favorite, our Mr. Happy Uncle Sam, with his molded, this is bisque molded top hat. It's not a hat put on him, but all of these are known as the helmet googlies for precisely the reason that their caps are molded on. And I'll show you the back of his head as well. This is a wonderful series. Max Handwerk was evidently not too successful with his dolls, because very often we find them where they were just sold as heads, and collectors have put bodies on them over the years. At any rate, the helmet googlies by Max Handwerk appear to have been made in a series, and it is so rare to ever find a complete series. Having Uncle Sam, we have the little German fellow with his green helmet, we have the Japanese fellow with his blue helmet and his amber-tinted complexion and painted black hair. And then we have this delightful one, which, look, one face, and on the other side, the Turkish soldier. Among the rarest, the double-sided. I always like to think that maybe in his marketing, Max Handwerk didn't figure he had too much of a Turkish market, so he divided the market up so he could sell more. At any rate, very, very few of these dolls ever surface today, and this is a wonderful, complete set, and they have great expressions. So much more research needs to be done in these dolls to find out what the motive was, what was the marketing strategy, what inspired Max Handwerk to make this series of military dolls, of soldiers of the world. So I wanted to show you some of the beautiful French bébés that we have coming up in the Kaleidoscope auction. Very, very wonderful, and start always with everyone's, well, if not favorite, because you say their favorite, and then you see a Brew or a Steiner and you say they're your favorite. But everyone loves the Jumeau bébés. A very, very fascinating company history of Jumeaus, and any of you who do not have the book, the Gimot book, you should have it because you should read about the fascinating history of this company. One of the first really, I like to style Émile Gimot as being the Henry Ford of the doll industry in France, not in America, and he really was. He learned how to incorporate the entire making of the doll within his factory in Montreuil, everything from the wigs to the eyes to the bodies to the heads to the boxes to the costumes were all done by the 1890s in his factory. And this was a complete turnaround for the French dolls that had always been made in small little, I like to think of darkened ateliers, workshops, where you would be making the head or painting the head, and another place making the bodies, and another making the wigs. He learned to combine them all. And we have some wonderful dolls made by that company. In the case of the ones I'm showing you, starting in 1878 on until like 1888, really just a 10-year decade. A beautiful, in the beginning here, a beautiful little early period Gimot, one of the first bébés made by the company, known for having very tentative, delicate expressions. If you like the dramatic flair of the later bébés, you probably don't like this doll, but advanced collectors, really knowledgeable collectors, love the very gentle, tentative look of the earliest period Gimot. Now, we also have in this auction very beautiful examples of the E.J. Gimot, the Gimots that began to appear about 1882 with a Gimot signature on them. And one of the things that collectors look for in these dolls also, and look at this one because she has it to an infinite degree, are the wonderful paperweight eyes, absolutely gorgeous eyes on this doll. And I'm going to turn her around so you can see her wonderful entire costume. Very, very beautiful. And then another example we have of the EJ is this one is heart-stopping. This one is so, you dream to ever find them this way. Number one, her size. She's that really beautiful size 3. And number 2, she is so totally original. From her very, very soft mohair wig to her dress to her shoes, which have the gold lettering, Bébé Gimot. Very, very desirable and beautiful condition. To her original chemise and her original pantalettes and her original slip with their very, very crisp original starched finish and their pleated edging. This is a very typical early Gimot original chemise from the beginning of the 1880s. And I'm going to turn her around now so you can see her, because this is the type of doll that you cherish so much and are so disappearing from our ability to find them in this wonderful, unplayed with, pristine condition. And then we have 2 examples of the beautiful and beloved Tête Gimots in the auction, and this being the first of the examples, and having her original Gimot dress. Émile Gimot's wife, Ernestine, was in charge of the couturier shops in the Gimot factory and purchased the silks, chose the designs. They had new fashionable designs coming out every 6 months that were in accommodation with what were the fashionable child outfits of the time. And that's why they were in such demand. And this little girl is wearing her original made in the Gimot factory dress. And for her period of dolls, she would be about 1888. Wonderful, wonderful quality of deep paperweight eyes. By this time, Gimot was making all of his eyes in his own factory with his special technique, his paperweight eyes. And another little Gimot, and I brought this little chair up, which is in the auction, because I wanted you to see how when you buy your dolls, sometimes if you can just find one little accessory to place near a doll, how it sort of brings it to life. It's just very interactive and looks much more lifelike than little soldier dolls all standing in a row. And this little doll is wearing her wonderful original costume, possibly Gimot original, but certainly original of the time, and just very beautiful. And she has the rarer to find brown eyes, and in this case, in a beautiful amber color, an amber brown, which lets the spiral threading of the eyes show a little more carefully. And then two very, very rare models, this one being the gorgeous EJA model, EJA. They're one of the first models that Jumeau had that actually bore his name. The A may signify the first of his dolls bearing his name. We're not sure what the A stands for, EJA. Made in two sizes only, and the EJA varies a great deal in its quality and in its beauty. So when you find an extraordinary one like this with great beauty, beautiful bisque, and when you see it come around again, now look at the eyes again. Check out those eyes. They are just extraordinary. A wonderful example of an EJA in very, very beautiful antique costume. And then the always beloved, the Bébé Triste. Some would consider it the signature doll of Jumeau, made for, well, almost like an 8-year period. And because it was so beloved. And this is extraordinary when you think of it, because it was a luxury doll. It was a very, very expensive doll of its time. It was actually modeled by a Parisian sculptor, Carrier Bellers, under commission from Jumeau. He didn't put his name on the doll because making dolls was considered sort of commercial if you were in the high art world. And so you wouldn't put your name on it, but you would do the sculpt, and you would accept the money for it, of course. And luckily, Jumeau kept records of it, so we're able to know that Carrier Bellers was the sculptor of this doll. And let me just turn it all the way around. And when it comes back around to you, look at the wonderful bonnet. And when it comes back around to you, look at the beautiful, beautiful complexion of this doll. And once again, as I said in Jumeau's, look for these extraordinary paperweight eyes, which this girl has to great advantage.